simple. If you want an election, if he wants an election, get an extension and let's have an election.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, here, the right honourable gentleman asked several questions. I'll try and deal with them in order. On the first point, my friend the Attorney General made absolutely clear, of course, that this is a judgment with which he disagreed. Though, of course, we respect the judgment of the Supreme Court. On the second point, about the Ben Burt Act? I will say what I'm sure he understands. We will, of course, obey the law, and we will come out of the EU on October the 31st. On his point about preparations for a no-deal Brexit, I congratulate my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, who just spoke for 2 hours on this matter. Our preparations are very far advanced, and I think this country can be entirely confident that we will be ready, deal or no deal. On his point about whether we are on the verge of getting a deal or not, well, it is absolutely true that negotiations are difficult, but we are making progress. And all I will say to him and to his friends is that they have not been made easier by the Surrender Act that he passed. And I am very proud, by the way, to take his next point, about everything that I did as Mayor of London. I may say to the current Mayor that he'd be better off spending less on press officers and more on police officers in London, because we were funding 20,000 more on our streets. And as for being trusted on Iran, Mr. Speaker, this is a man who took the shilling of the mullahs from Press TV. Mr. Speaker, I think there's something. I was rather sad, actually, in a way, that the Labour conference was interrupted by the ruling, because I was awestruck by some of the things I heard, doubtless designed to obscure the inanity of his policy over Brexit. He wants to abolish fee-paying schools at a cost of £7 billion to the taxpayer. He wants a 4-day working week, cutting the incomes of the lowest paid in this country. He wants to abolish Ofsted, and now we hear he wants to abolish all immigration controls from the EU. But there was a crucial passage missing from his speech, it turns out, Mr. Speaker. I think there's something slightly pitiful, in a way, about the right honourable gentleman. It seems that he actually did want to call an election now, Mr. Speaker. There was a passage in his speech calling for an election now, but it was censored by the Stasi in the form of the Shadow Chancellor. Or possibly it was the Shadow Lord Chancellor. Mr. Speaker, the right honourable gentleman is being gagged. He's being muzzled. He's being held captive by his colleagues. They won't let him say what he wants to say. I say, free the Islington One, Mr. Speaker. And why won't they allow him to have an election, Mr. Speaker? Why won't they allow him to unleash his charms on the electorate? It's because they're not only terrified that he's going to lose, but also even more terrified by the remote possibility that he might win. He can't control his own party. He can't decide whether he's for Leave or for Remain. He's being held captive by his colleagues. The electorate are being held captive by this zombie parliament and this zombie opposition, and he wants the entire country to be held captive in the EU after October the 31st at a cost of more than £1 billion a month. We say no. I say no. Let's get Brexit done and let's take this country forward.
Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister?
Order! 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 I appeal to members of the House to calm themselves. I've just called the right honourable gentleman, the member for Chingford and Woodford Green. He is entitled to put his question, and the rest of us are entitled to hear him. Mr. Ian Duncan Smith.
Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate my right honourable friend on his very good put down of the shallow leader of the opposition? Can I also say that I understand now that his government has changed the root origin of the term yellowhammer to describe the botched attempt by the leader of the opposition to dispatch his own deputy. And could I ask him, I received and saw in my constituency, as others did recently, leaflets from the Labour Party calling for a general election now. Could he answer me this question? Can he give me any reason why we are not having an election at this particular point? Does he think for any moment it could be because the leader of the opposition fears his own party just as much as he fears us?
Prime Minister.
I thank my right honourable friend for his very acute question, Mr. Speaker, and I'm afraid the answer is very simple, that they don't want an election because they are not sure that the public would trust them with the government of this country, and I think that they're right, and I think that they put the yellow into yellowhammer, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Ian Blackford.